Okay, so thank you, Todd, for joining me and talking about your family and your work with the Iowa Farmers of Color. I'd like to just start with you telling me a little bit about who you are, just kind of what kind of titles you have and all of that.
It's Todd Western III. I live currently in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up in Waterloo, Iowa. Went to University of Iowa, graduated from there, and moved up to Minneapolis. Been up here ever since. I've been in finance, relationship management. Currently, I'm a senior donor advisor at Greater Twin Cities United Way in Minneapolis. I am a 11-year high school football coach. I also coached the youth feeder program for about 17 years. And I am also the co-founder of the Iowa Farmers of Color. I've been playing drums for the same church for 30 years now. I coach my 12-year-old's fifth grade basketball team, and I'm on the board of several what I call significant organizations that are helping our communities, one of which is the 100 Black Men of America, which goal is to mentor young Black males into really just helping them have a successful life, realize things that they would have never realized before.
So tell me, what role does farming play and why are you, because you have obviously have so many other things going on. Um, what significance is farming for you and your family?
Well, in order to answer that, I first have to go back to imagine 1864. Prior to that, it was Emancipation Proclamation. After that, it was end of slavery officially in Texas. The Civil War had just ended. And then my family settles in 1864 in Mahaska County. And just let that sink in 1864, with all those major events happening in the world and specifically in Iowa, our family basically back in those days put a stake down and said, this is where we're going to start our family legacy. So I'm proud to say 161 years later, we still farm that same farm. And so when you look at those different chapters between 1864 and today, that is the reason why farming plays a major role in my family, because I take great pride in being the sixth generation farmer that is actively farming that farm, both in Mahaska County and then when my father expanded into Waterloo. And so, we've weathered a lot during those times. The farm crisis, again, the racial tensions since beginning, the USDA bad business practices, those types of things. And so, we've weathered a lot. And so I believe that this is like a race where the baton is handed to each generation. And then in this particular case, uh, you go back to 2000, prior to 2008, everything is going well. I'm working a corporate job up in Minneapolis. My dad, who was the first Black supervisor, John Deere, where he worked for 41 years, also was a busy person, which is where I get it from. He was training, he would train for his 13th marathon. My mom was singing opera, so we were always, chasing her around, listening to her opera singing. And while she was also a school teacher in the Waterloo school system. And so in addition to my father, working at John Deere, 8, 10 hour days, training for the Chicago Marathon in October, and then doing the farming, raising three boys, those types of things. Life was great and we were doing very well. And at that time, I thought, okay, at some point later in my life, I'm going to go back and help dad farm the farm. Well, in July 2008, my father went out like he would normally do. He would work all day, maybe work on the farm about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Then he would ride his bike to the local track and he would ride around or jog around the track and come home. Well, this particular night, my mom gets a knock at the door at 1 o'clock in the morning, and my father died in a bicycle accident. So again, another weathered chapter in this 106-year legacy. So he dies in a bicycle accident. And at that point, I have my son of my own, building my own family. My brother, who lives in Waterloo, was a city planner, Chris, and my other brother, Adam, up here, and then my son, Todd the fourth, is up here. my mom has to come out of retirement, and so we all come together as a family, and we really pick up where Dad left off. I mean, it was I'm still in shock that it happened. I remember at his funeral we were looking at each other because he died in July. He died 1 week before his 65th birthday and 9 months before his retirement. And so, it was just a shock, right? And so I remember during the funeral, right around July, August, me and my brother looked at each other and said, "Holy crap, there's still a crop in the field." We're so preoccupied with the grief and the shock that, yeah, there's a crop in the field that Dad planted in April that we got to get out. And so from that point on, we just stepped up and we got things going. And from 2008 to 2015. We did things exactly what Dad did. My mom came out of retirement after she got her doctorate, and and she really started to learn the business of farming. Things like the vendors, like Iowa State Extension Office, what an equip program was, what cost sharing was, all these types of things. And around 2015 till today, I'm happy to report, our mom has got us into Dr. Barbara Western, as I like to call it. We call it the CEO. Mom got us, really in a good position to be successful financially and operationally on the farm. She has relationships with all the state agencies, federal agencies, got us involved in a lot of programs, and I'm happy to report that now we're into a lot of regenerative agriculture programs. And so now, we're doing the cereal ride and no-till and things of that nature. And so when you ask that question, it begs that I need to go back and tell you why it's important to me now is because of that. And so now, I do live in Minneapolis, but I go back to the farm twice a month. Luckily, we don't have livestock, so I don't have to be there every day. So my son actually got involved as well. And so he comes back with us, but he actually started his own agriculture business. He actually grows microgreens, and so he grows microgreens for the restaurant downtown. And like a true Western, he's got 18 other jobs as well. He works a corporate job in advertising, and him and his wife they grow their microgreens, and the business is booming so much that he's actually had to employ my other two daughters, Alexandra and Addison, to help with the business on a weekly basis.
Ye- it- in that story of your family, you know, tell me what your thoughts were, at that moment that you realized not only that your dad was gone, but that this whole legacy was kind of, sounds like, it kind of was always part of your story, but kind of a little bit in the background, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
I think most, or I'll just, I think the conversations I had with a lot of kids of farmers is that they graduate college, they go off and they try to do their own thing and try to figure themselves out, with always in the back of their mind that at some point I'm going to go back and help out my parents on the farm. And of multi-children families, there's always one child in the family that really takes on the farming. And so, and in this case, two of the three boys, we are really into the farming now, my son. Um, so, you know, when he passed away, she asked the feeling of what I thought about taking over the farm. I It was one of those things where literally, um, I was just I just stepped up to the challenge really at the end of the day, because one of the things that's interesting to note is, as a black farmer, it's hard enough being a farmer in general, but then when you're when you're a black farmer, you have these other dynamics that are in play. So, for example, as a farmer, remember I'm 59, so in the 70s and 80s, the conversations about black farmers was non-existent. If it was, it would be things like, okay, if a white farmer knew, not all white farmers, but if some in some communities in some areas, they would say, if you the black farmers raised that you didn't talk too much about the farm because it could be taken away from you. You didn't talk about your own community because it wasn't as cool. And now we're talking up north. So down south is a different experience. Down south, most people are farmers, and it's cool to talk about farm. But up north, as a person of color, you don't really talk about it to the black community, and you definitely don't talk about it to the white community. So that's what I kind of raised on is, and so I say that to say, as to be honest with you, like a couple years before my father passed away, I um I started understanding and learning some of the history of our farm. And he kind of, he appreciated it obviously, but he lived it, so it wasn't like a huge thing to him. But when I live in the city of Minneapolis, and that was becoming a big thing. And I was like, wow, this owning this farm for at the time was over 150 years is a big deal. And so when he passed, I really got into the history of our farm and talking to people and learning about the fact that in 1944, 14% of the farmers were black, and today there's less than 2%. So then I start to use our farm to say, okay, here's how we fit in that history. We've lasted 160 years, and we're part of that 1.4% population. And in Iowa, there's 86,000 farmers in Iowa, and there's only 59 black farmers. So I, in my mind, I'm like, we owe it to our legacy and to our ancestors to say, hey, we're going to keep this going. Now we're going to keep it going, but we're going to shine it up. We're going to make sure that we're registered with the state of Iowa as a century farm, as a heritage farm. And at the end of the day, we're going to talk about it proudly and just say, hey, with no expectations, like we're the Westerns, we're farmers, and we're part of the farming community. That's really at the end of the day.
And what was that? Do you know the story of your family first acquiring that land? Because I could imagine that it wasn't the most hospitable environment for your ancestors in 1864 to acquire the land in the first place. Do you know the story?
I'm very limited, very limited. All I know is I pick up from where, the fourth generation, which is my aunts, Charlene Montgomery, Joyce Cook, Betty Smith, and my dad. So my dad had three sisters, and those were three sisters. So when I talked to my dad and those three sisters, by all accounts, they were well respected in the community. They helped the neighbors helped them. Obviously, you had your certain issues, but to the extent of danger and life threatening and things of that nature, that was non-existent. Um, and so they were well liked in the community.
Can you explain to me then about the you were talking about it, but the difficulties of being, I guess for your father, if you knew of them, or today about being a farmer of color in a place like Iowa?
Again, farming is hard no matter who you are, no matter what color. Farming is hard because we all are at the mercy of Mother Nature, right? And then the second thing we're at mercy of is pricing. And so those two things don't care what color you are. So now you add then that as a farmer of color, I like to tell people like we're always in a position, a farmer of color is always in a position of validating ourselves, especially up north. And the reason I keep bringing up north is because I spend a lot of times with farmers down south. So when I mentioned, 1.4% of the farmers are from, there's only 1.4% of the farmers that are black. I would say that 1% of those are down south. The 0.4% are up north. So therefore, it's not as common to see a black farmer up north. So I use it as a context to say, like, when we go to certain conferences or we're in certain environments or we're in certain dealerships or certain buying situations, we're always in a position of validating. For example, if I go to a conference and I sit at a table and I wear my Western Farm shirt, the first thing they'll do is they'll try to understand, okay, Western Farms, you must work on the farm. And then when I tell them I don't work on the farm, they look at me and say, well, who owns the farm? And I say, I own the farm. So I go through this whole thing of how I own it, when did I own it? And then you still get that look of, huh, that's kind of odd. And then you'll get some that will say, they'll go, huh. And I'll say, I get it, right? And they'll say, yeah, they'll say, you don't know I've never heard of that many black farmers. And I always tell them, who do you think built the South for free? Because, it's, we're all, at one point, we were all farmers, right? At one point, we were all farmers. Everybody planted a seed to live. And so, but yeah, so we're always in that position of validating. Even like when the diesel fuel guy comes out. This happened like 3 years ago. He comes out and we're all standing in the field and we're getting our diesel fuel, and he says, "Is the owner around?" And I said, "That'd be me." And then we have to go through the question of when did I own it? How did I own it? How long have I owned it? And then you get to a question of Do you lease the equipment? Do you own the equipment? Now, this is the diesel fuel guy, right? So it's a constant state of validation of who we are and how we got what we got.
So, why did you feel that it was important to have the Farmers of Color group? I mean, I can read into that, but I'd love to hear you
Right.
articulate it.
So what happens is, again, none of this was planned. I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm a very spiritual person, so we were raised very spiritual people, and I believe I was led by God. I always had these conversations. I tease people, like, I have these conversations with God where I feel a tap on the shoulder. When my father passed away, you know what you have to do now, right? And so I said, okay. And so then as I'm going through these processes, like I just talked to you about, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I thought to myself, you know, if there's only 59 Black farmers in Iowa, at this stage, they've got to be a longevity farm, right? And so I said, and what if they've gone through the same thing I've gone through with sudden death? Or what if they've gotten things to celebrate? They've been around a long time. And what if their generations prior did not celebrate the farm the way they need to be celebrated? So I said, you know what? Let me start the Iowa Farmers of Color. And so what happened was, the Iowa Farms of Color started back around 2021, 22, and it literally started with about 10 people on a phone call, or actually a Zoom call. And we would just get together on the phone and we say, hey, how are you? And it would grow each week. We got to like maybe 20 people. And all it was is very informal, like, oh, hey, how are you? I didn't, where's your farm? Where's your farm? What do you grow? And then with my personality, I'm like the unofficial event planner, and I like big productions. And so I said, you know what, we need to make this bigger. So because I have the energy and the bandwidth, I said, let's make this official. So we made it official. We started the Iowa Farms of Color in 3 years ago. And the first year we had 70 individuals. The next year we had 150. And then this year we are hoping to get about 200. And again, the intent of the Iowa Farmers of Color was to bring together farmers of color, all farmers. But we have to say, and that's the other lesson here, is that it's for all farmers, but I have to say farmers of color, because that way the farmers of color feel it's a safe space to come to. Because there's certain conferences you go to where you're not as welcome to be there. And so that's why I make that point to say Iowa farmers of color. And so we get all races there, all genders there. We get specialty crop, we get ranchers, we get a lot of urban agriculture. And then, so the number one goal is just to build community to know each other. Number two is to bridge that information gap between the farmers and the state agencies. And number three is to just, come away with motivation and ideas that you can take to your farm to obviously ultimately create more revenue for your farm.
Was muted. Yeah. What kind of have you seen changes? It's not been all that long, but have you seen changes in what your impact is with the Farmers of Color conference?
Absolutely. The support we've gotten both from farmers, state agencies, politicians, because you think about it, the first year we had it, after the conference was over, I got a mysterious call from Washington, D.C., and it was U.S. Secretary Vilsack, former Vilsack, and he called and he said he would like to meet with us to learn about what we're doing. And so we sat down, met with him. Very smart man, very on top of it, and he was genuinely interested in what we're doing, and he was able to help us open a few doors. Then the second year, we had Senator Chuck Grassley do our opening remarks, and then this year we have Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig doing our opening ceremony. And so it's been very fruitful. And one of the things I can never forget is one of the ladies that was leaving the conference. I asked her, I said, she was an older lady, and I said, how did you like the conference? And she said, sweetheart, this was food for the soul. So once she told me that, I knew I was onto something.
Did you feel like those politicians are both speaking to the group, but also absorbing what you need them
Absolutely,
to?
because what happens is, and is there's no what happens is, the common thing is that we want to help Black farmers, but we don't know where they're at. We want to help farmers of color, but we don't know where they're at. That's I won't get into that piece. However, my job then is I'm going to take that hurdle away from them, and I'm going to on my own find them and bring them to the table, and then bring those state agencies and politicians to the table. Now from there, what I would hope to have happened is that the politicians and the state agencies utilize the energy why I got it to help them, to help me, and I help them, so that we can all benefit. Because this, the farming community is a tight knit group, and all farmers should be working together. Because at the end of the day, we have the one common thing, and that is we have dirt and we have seed, and we need to plant it. And the better is more successful we can plant that seed, the better our communities are as a result.
Have you seen any interest in young farmers of color? Are they ending up attending or contacting you outside of it as well?
Absolutely. So just young people in general, regardless of color, are really getting into agriculture. You watch 60 Minutes or the news, you'll see all the time, especially people of color, like they'll live in, there's Leah Penniman, who has this documentary called Farming While Black. She lived in New York, and then she moved upstate New York in this raw 40 acres and totally developed it. Her and her husband built the house, built the buildings. Now she has this 40-acre space of pure zen and utopia of agribusiness, growing their own food, holding conferences, things of that nature. So, and you look at my son, he was doing very well working in the corporate world. And then now, in addition to that, he started his own urban farm where now he grows microgreens in his basement. He grows fruits and vegetables in his house. He takes vacated lots in the city of Minneapolis, and he converts those to growing spaces that then turn into learning opportunities for the community to come in to learn how to set up their own urban agriculture. So this agriculture thing is really growing with the young people.
You mentioned that your farm has become regenerative, and what kind of things have you learned over these years of interacting and becoming more involved on the farm that you're now using to change the practices?
What I learned is, number one, it doesn't happen overnight, regenerative agriculture, because we have two separate farms. The one in Mahaska County has pretty good dirt, and it doesn't need a lot of help. But the farm we have in Waterloo, that soil needs a lot of help. And so that's where we're really focused on regenerative agriculture, to try to get that soil health back. And so we're doing, we started it about 8 years ago, and we can see the slow process of the crop getting better, the soil getting better. So we do no-till, we do cover crop with cereal rye, we do reduce nutrient management. And so we do all these types of things. Now, I always tell people it's not as sexy and fun as back in the day when you get that plow, that disc, and see that black diesel fuel, that black smoke come out of the tractor, and you're really in there just tilling the dirt. It's not as fun as it used to be, but we're saving money, and we're being better for the environment, and our crops are getting a little bit more. We're getting more revenue on our crops.
And where do you find inspiration for all of that? Where
I
you
have no idea.
the
I mean, I just people ask me that, and some people, you've heard that statement called, what is your why? What is your purpose? I think I found my purpose, and and the beauty of it is, I guess, is out of tragedy with my father's untimely death in 2008, I've turned that into now my why, my purpose. That is not necessarily for me. It's to highlight my ancestors, and then to set it up for my children to do the business as well. I tell them all the time, you don't have to physically farm, but you will not sell it, and you will learn the business of the farming. So when if you want to rent it out, you understand how because I mean, that's a whole nother job, being a landowner and renting it out. So my motivation just comes from, I think this is my why, my purpose, and I get a lot of joy out of it. I get a lot of joy out of educating people in general about the contributions of Black farmers. I get a lot of education, a lot of thrill out of educating young people on that, Blacks are a significant piece of agriculture. And then just the other thing too is just, my ancestors went through a lot, in the last 161 years. And so just honoring that legacy to say, hey, it was not for all not.
Would you ever live there on the farm?
Well, there's a running joke with me and my wife that I would like to, but she actually grew up in the country. She doesn't want to go back, but we're gonna make a compromise. I'm retiring in about 6 years. So I think I'll split it. Most people might go to Florida or Arizona. I'm gonna spend a lot of time in Mahaska County, Iowa.
And where exactly in Mahaska? Where is
Oh,
it?
New Sharon,
Okay.
New
I
Sharon,
don't think
Iowa.
it's
So
that far from us.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
in yeah, Knoxville, so
yeah, yep,
over east, I believe.
yep,
But,
yep.
so and and what do you feel like the climate really is towards farmers of color now in Iowa? Like, what's the current state of affairs?
I will say I have not experienced any negativity as far as what are you doing, why are you doing it. It's all been love, um, and even those that question, I use that opportunity to educate, and so that they don't make that mistake again to assume that there are no black farmers or farmers. I mean, again, when I say, mean farmers of color, like the indigenous people, obviously, right? I mean, farming starts with them. Indigenous, Asian, Mexican, black, white. I mean, we're all farmers. When you plant a seed in the dirt, we're all farmers, right? And but yeah, so I just want to educate and highlight the contributions of black farmers.
But other people, I guess, when you get together at the conference or you're who do you co-lead the farmers of color with?
So my son, Todd Western IV, Hannah, Skittles, Kittles, and then Schaefer Ridgeway, um, and huge support from Practical Farmers of Iowa, who does a lot of our back office. And so, yeah, we really enjoy what we're doing.
So from other farmers, I mean, do you hear things about people trying to get into it? People, is there,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
saying there's a climate of support now in Iowa, you feel?
yes, yeah. I do feel there's a climate of support in Iowa and everywhere, because we get a lot of young people. So this year, the focus of this year, um, our conference is we always get uh, allies, ambassadors of farmers. We get people who are thinking about and are curious about it. We get new farmers. We get middle of the road farmers that have been doing it for a little bit and want to be better. And you get the experienced farmers like myself and Mike Cook, who's the only other black farmer I knew growing up in Iowa. So you get those wide range of individuals at the farm. And so our our courses then geared towards those individuals. And the courses that we're going to have this year are we're going to have breakout workshops led by state agencies and businesses that teach them, number one, how to structure your business. So let's say you want to start a farm business. How do you structure it? How you file your taxes? Number two is you're thinking about farming. How do you incorporate AI into that? And that came about because last year, one of the farmers said, hey, I just started farming and I use AI to help me with a lot of my things. So we got the ideas like, if he had that idea, I'm sure other people, and heck, even I as a row crop farmer, maybe I can use AI for some capacity. So we're going to be talking about how to utilize AI in farming. And then my son from advertising, he's going to be talking about how to market your farm using social media, because social media is a huge avenue now that farmers really need to embrace, and especially urban farmers. So he's going to be talking about that.
That's really great. All right. I think that's all of the questions I had. Um, oop, I don't have that. Um, is there anything I haven't asked about?
Um, no, I think you covered it.
Do you have any, I mean, I guess I wonder if you feel like it doesn't feel to me like discrimination has vanished, and that there must be elements of that all around, but how does it feel present at this point in time in being a farmer in Iowa? Or is it? Is it subtle, like you were saying, people asking questions? I don't know. How does it manifest?
Well, just just as a farmer of color, you know, you always you're always on alert of the one person in the room. But again, I just want to emphasize, the experiences I've had overall have been welcoming. But this, like with anything, you always have that one individual that will make you try to validate how you got what you got when you got it and what are you going to do with it. Um, and so most days you can handle that. There are days where it gets a little stressful. Um, you know, but overall, the Iowa farming community has been very welcoming, and and we've been able to thrive. Obviously, over 161 years.
I guess I just want to end with like, how can we, myself as a farmer, but also as the coalition, and I'm also a Practical Farmers of Iowa kind of member. Um, how can we be more supportive? What more could you use, or how can people be involved that aren't farmers of color? What kind of support do you see is still needed?
Um, Really, just we're at the end of the day, I always tell people like, we're no different again than anybody else. I mean, we plant a seed, we're a farmer, right? It's just uh, the support we need is the biggest thing we have as a farmer of color is that um, information doesn't always flow down to small farmers of color, right? And so that's the biggest thing is making sure that information flows down to farmers of color, and I'm doing my best to make sure that happens. That's the biggest challenge is making sure that we get all the information. And number two is, with the current climate the way it is, you heard about the lawsuit from the USDA that at one point we did win and then it was fought, and now that lawsuit has been pretty much done. We it's
Which
it's one
law?
of those things where
What are you
so
referring?
the USDA, the Glitford Pigford lawsuit, I believe I'm pronouncing it right.
Pickford.
um, you know right, there was a lawsuit where the USDA had admitted its wrongdoings with bad business practices and predatory loans back in the day, and so that had come out in legal, and it was confirmed, and so a lot of people don't believe that that should have happened, and that it wasn't that bad as they say, and so we beg to differ, because if you look at again the decline of farming from farmers of color, 14% in 1944 to less than 1.4%. And that doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen for no specific reason. So yeah, so then uh, I try not to dwell on that. I right now in 2025, I just try to do my part to make sure that we uplift all farmers, then specifically black and people of color farmers, to make sure that we get as much equal access to the information and the programs, and so that we can all be successful and provide healthy food. Because right now, the biggest thing we all face is getting healthy food. And so as farmers, we need all the support we can to produce those healthy foods.
Mm. So tell us just kind of when it is and where it is. Where can people find you?
So the conference is on December 5th and December 6th. We're holding our third annual Iowa Farmers of Color conference in Ames, Iowa. It's the only event of its kind in the state where we're bringing together farmers, new and beginning farmer, livestock producers, specialty crops, row crop farmers from across Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska. Um, and we know that Iowa has a rich history of farming community. This conference is a great place for new farmers, youth, small producers, and experienced farmers to get plugged into latest resources. Um, and many viewers may not realize how many opportunities exist in modern agriculture, from climate smart practices to small business development to USDA programs. This event will break down all those barriers. Again, what attendees will get out of this is hands-on workshop with USDA, state agencies, lenders, and ag educators. They'll get access to grants, land access program, conservation incentives, and technical assistance. And then lastly, just we'll build a community where we're going to feel motivated and close to each other when this all ends.
Great. And do you have a website or some kind of
Yeah, so you can register at iowafarmersofcolor.com. You can register at iowafarmersofcolor.com, or you can give me a call. And my email is Todd Western 24 at Gmail.
All right. I'm going to end
And
it.
then the other thing too is this year we're going to a two-day event. So Saturday, December 6th is the actual event, the conference, but then the night before on Friday, December 5th, around a social event, we'll be showcasing a film called Farming While Black, and it talks about how Leah Penniman lived in New York and then moved upstate New York and developed her own farm. And so this is a documentary about her journey.
Excellent.